All right, excellent. Thank you everyone for joining us for our second marketing webinar this term, Marketing Strategies and Messaging. My name is Melina Eaton. I'm the marketing lead faculty here at SNHU. And tonight we're going to be talking about the role of messaging in the development of marketing strategies. We're going to be focusing on how companies develop messaging strategies, how they alter those messages to reach different demographics, and the role that marketing channels play in the development of those messages. The structure of our meeting tonight is very informal, and we welcome your questions throughout the presentation using the chat feature. We'll also make sure we save time at the end for any additional questions that come up. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to our guest speaker, Monica, to introduce herself and to get us started. Monica?
Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Smith, and I'm excited to be speaking with you tonight to talk about messaging. I have worked on brands across industries, including automotive, healthcare, toys, entertainment, and financial services. So quite a wide swath of brands. I've worked on the client and agency side, which has given me a really interesting perspective, and have led the development of campaigns from strategy through production and finally to the consumer. So since I've been here at SNU, I've taught Marketing 113, and I'm currently teaching Services Marketing, Marketing 266, and I'm loving it. So I'm excited to be here and share this presentation with you on messaging, and I look forward to your questions. I hope you have some. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Oops, I went too far. All right, marketing and messaging strategy. So what is messaging? That's a key question. What do we mean when we talk about messaging? At its core, messaging is just about communicating. It's what you do when you text or you post on Instagram. Whether you use emoticons in your messages or filters on your Snapchat, you have an intended audience when you send that message, and you have a message that you want to share. While brands' messages are more researched and developed, at the core, it's the same as you sending a text message. Marketers communicate with consumers and users to engage them with their brands and their products or their services. Messaging strategy is critical because it outlines the benefits of the product or service, and it reinforces, and this is key, it reinforces the brand's positioning. Messaging strategy flows from the overall brand strategy. Brand strategy is the starting point. Messaging strategy comes from that. It is really critically important that messaging strategy is consistent. It has to have consistency with the brand strategy and brand messaging, and then it needs to have consistency across channels. So whether your advertising is running in social media or on television or on the radio or in print or it's direct, there needs to be consistency in the messaging across those different channels. It's also important for brands and marketers to consider what is the outcome that you want at the end of the day from the communication and engagement with the consumers. Basically, what do you want them to think? What do you want them to feel? Or what do you want them to do? And these three things, thinking, feeling, and doing, tie into the communication objectives. Thinking, that's cognitive communication objective. Are you trying to build awareness for the product? Are you trying to educate or explain something to the consumer? Affective, affective, image and personality. This is where you would use maybe endorsers. You're trying to strike an emotional chord that's talking to them on a level that you want them to feel something. And when you want a consumer to do something, you're really talking at the behavioral level. You're trying to change behavior. You're trying to increase trial or get them to purchase something or try something new. It is really important as you're developing your messaging strategy to understand what the final outcome that you want for your product or service. The messaging strategy is the foundation for the creative concept. It's often known in the agency world and the marketing world as the big idea. And the creative team that develops that creative concept will use the messaging strategy to build it. That will include the key benefits and services that need to be included, that are what we call mandatories in developing the creative idea. It's also important to note here that although Products have features, products and services have features. For example, an SUV that seats seven seats is a feature of the vehicle. However, what we might communicate in the messaging, it may be more important to say, it's got room for the whole family, or we show a mom taking her child to soccer practice with all of their friends. Because what people are really buying is the benefit of that feature. So that's really important to remember when you think about messaging strategies and how it fits how we communicate those products or services. Messaging execution. We have some examples in this presentation tonight of brands that are doing an excellent job at that, and we have an example of one who really misstepped in this area. But there are multiple different styles of execution. There can be lifestyle, so the product's positioned in a way that I want to be, these are the ones that are, if you think of glamorous or premium products where someone's shown like getting off the private jet and going onto the private yacht, they're positioning a lifestyle. This is also where you would find endorsements as another type, a style of advertising and execution. Evidence, if you're trying to convince someone that the product is better, especially a competitor, then evidence would be a type of style that you would use. Tone is also incredibly important. Ads can be humorous in tone or serious or upbeat. If you think of Skittles advertising, they're always upbeat. They're as colorful as the product is itself. And that is a part of the brand's personality, which should also come across in the messaging strategy. The format matters in the execution, obviously, whether it's TV or digital or print or out of home or radio or social media. There's a huge difference in thinking someone's watching this on their smartphone versus someone's watching it in a movie theater. If you do in-theater advertising and you have that large screen to, engage the viewer. So all of these factors are critical as brands are developing their messaging strategies. So does anyone have any questions about what I've gone through so far? Okay, we'll keep going then. So we're going to move to our first example. Smartphones connecting people. And that may seem obvious. With 80% penetration of US mobile users, smartphones in this country are ubiquitous. Apple launched the iPhone 10 years ago, and after that launch, there was only 6% penetration of smartphones. Apple and Samsung, who are featured in this slide and we're going to talk about for a few minutes, are the OEM leaders in smartphones. OEM means original equipment manufacturers. At the core, these two brands compete at connecting with consumers. When you first saw this slide, you probably had a reaction to it, likely emotional. You either love the iPhone and hate the Galaxy, or you hate the iPhone and you love the Galaxy. You may have recognized some of the screenshots that are on this slide and had a reaction triggered by the memory of them, like that you laughed at that ad, or you thought it was powerful, or how it made you feel. And that's really an important way that these two brands connect with people. Smartphones are at a mature stage in their adoption. The number of people in the US who are not already smartphone users is very limited. Apple and Samsung will continue to innovate with technology and design to engage consumers. What you'll see in these ads is that they are focused on striking an emotional chord while still demonstrating key features. For an apples to apples comparison, pun intended, I included one launch ad of the iPhone 7 and the Galaxy 8. And what you see here is similarity in the messaging. Launch ads connect features to benefits, and creatively, they connect with a story that ideally transports the viewer. In Midnight, which is the iPhone 7, one of the iPhone 7 launch ads, they tell the story of a young man who leaves his home to film the city on his iPhone. And through that journey that he takes, they're able to demonstrate visually some of the features of the ad, that it is water tolerant, he's filming through a sprinkler, that it films in low light. So they communicate the features, but as part of a story. In Scuba Diver, which is one of the launch ads for the Galaxy 8, It is shown beautifully, the product is shown beautifully underwater that demonstrated a couple of key features here. One, that it's waterproof, and that this idea of the box and Galaxy and Samsung unboxing your phone, the box is gone. The edges are fluid like the water. And so this phone in the water with the scuba diver filming this whale going past is just a beautiful execution, very elegant of how the fluidity of their product is communicated visually along with what you would imagine what it's like to be in water. Moving forward from launch, the 7 Plus and Barber focuses on one key feature, the portrait mode, and it tells a story of a barber shop that becomes popular by posting the portrait mode photos of their haircuts in their window. It's humorous in tone, and the music engages viewers in the story. The Galaxy 8 commercial creators takes a completely different bent. It focuses on smartphone users who are using them to create videos, films, everything that you see on YouTube. And it introduces an overarching message and their tagline, do what you can't. And I'll repeat that, do what you can't, because there is so much pushback on not being able to do things, or they're young, or they don't have the money. And it's a message that's clearly targeted at millennials, who are the largest generation of content creators that we've ever had outside of the marketing and traditional advertising world. And it also connects back to Samsung's unbox message. Before we leave this slide, I want to point out one other thing, which is the taglines for these two brands. iPhone talks about, or Apple talks about the iPhone being practically magic. Galaxy 8 talks about, or Samsung talks about the Galaxy 8 as being infinitely amazing. There's a lot of similarity in that message. Like if you think about a product that is practically magic, that makes you feel something. It evokes a sense of wonder. And so does infinitely amazing. So as different as people may think these two brands are and the products that they have, the way that they're trying to communicate with consumers right now shares a lot of similarities. So we're going to move on to our next slide and start talking about a very different type of connecting with people, which is connecting through price. And this ad, or the screenshot of this ad, is probably fairly familiar. This is our Trivago spokesperson. This is Trivago, if you're not familiar with it, is an online hotel search site, and they are doing incredibly well. Their revenue was up 60% in Q1 from 2016. But Trivago took a very different approach. For being an online product, they embraced television to build their brand awareness versus a digital strategy. And that strategy has worked really well for the brand. As all of us are familiar with this casually dressed, somewhat frumpy spokesperson who pitches us on the idea of finding the ideal hotel for the best price, Hotel Trivago. The message is simple, and it appeals to consumers who desire for a deal. You know, if I'm going to stay in a hotel, why do I want to spend a lot of money for it? I want the best deal I can get. But Trivago's successful messaging for their brand can also have an impact on the hotel brands that are featured. If consumers start focusing on getting the best price, how do hotel brands differentiate themselves? And that's the key to our next slide. Connecting with purpose, and how global humanity and the idea of global humanity is transforming travel. And this really starts with the upstart disruptor brand Airbnb. This slide looks at two different brands, both who at their core sell rooms to people to allow them to stay when they're away from home. That's the connection between Hyatt and Airbnb. But how they position travel by messaging about our shared connections and global humanities is a new way that they're approaching this category. The Airbnb ad, which is on the left side of the screen, titled "We Accept," ran in the Super Bowl this year. They launched this ad that visually illustrated the shared humanity of people by using dissolving cuts through the faces of people that were actually Airbnb employees, and gave the message, no matter who you are, where you're from, or who you love, or who you worship, you deserve to belong. Hashtag we accept. They are communicating a very clear message about the brand's mission and their desire to be open and inclusive, both for their host and for their guest. The message to those who are using Airbnb is that the company as host is creating inclusive spaces for people to experience the world. Airbnb, from its formation, has always positioned itself and connected that in their messaging as we're not just renting you a room, we're giving you this opportunity to live as a local, to share and to experience and to explore the world from someone else's home. Hyatt, which is a very traditional and established hotel company, this year launched a new global platform called the World of Hyatt. And they're connecting this simple idea that there needs to be more understanding and we need to understand each other better in the world. In this commercial called The World of Understanding, they actually use the song What the World Needs Now is Love, which I'm not going to sing because I'm not a good singer, but it's a beautiful ad, and we have the links at the end of the presentation. But the commercial shows vignettes of travelers and situations where they need understanding, either to communicate, to buy food, to share in a train ride. Hyatt themselves stated that this campaign and this positioning reaffirms their commitment to building genuine and trusted experiences and engaging its community of loyalists in a way that's meaningful to them. And that is a very powerful brand statement. Their community of loyalists. So they're really targeting the people who use their hotels. But they're trying to connect using their hotels, not in the way that they did in the past, which focused on, the quality of the rooms or the locations of the hotels, but instead in the experiences that people are interested in engaging to. This is actually an insight that is very powerful, both that Airbnb and Hyatt are using. Marriott's using it as well. I just didn't include them in this presentation. And the millennials rank very high on wanting experiences. So you're seeing this starting to transform the way brands are messaging and positioning their products for consumers. Okay. So moving on, one of the most important things for brands is segmentation and knowing who their target market is. This is where brands can be really successful in expanding and growing. It's also where they can have some missteps. Target markets may share similar demographics. It could be the same age, income level, live in major metropolitan areas, but they could have very different cultures, languages, and connections to the brand. And there are really two major areas that brands need to consider. Generational. So it's a big difference in how you position your message to the millennials versus the boomers to Gen X. Multicultural. So as this country continues, the demographics of this country continue to shift, and we continue to become a more diverse country, more multicultural. And this is going to become more important for marketers to be aware of and to be sensitive to and to understand, to have understanding and true consumer insights that help them navigate this changing demographics. This is why marketers are kind of moving ahead. Sometimes the ads, Cheerios had an ad a year ago that received some backlash for having this multicultural family, but the smart marketers see where the country is going, and so their messaging and their ads are actually moving in that direction, sometimes ahead of where some current consumers are. Any questions? No? Okay, we will keep moving. So next I want to talk about an ad that delivers very well, and a brand that delivered very well on connecting with a different target market and expanding their target market. This is Pantene, which is a very well-known beauty brand. And their tagline is strong is beautiful. Strong is beautiful has a couple of meanings. One, strong is beautiful. The hair is beautiful when it's strong and healthy, but it also reflects on the woman, that she is strong and that her strength is beautiful as well. Well, historically, these ads, Pantene's ad, and what you see at the top of the slide is Selena Gomez, who's one of their spokespeople. And with the famous Pantene hair shot where their hair is beautifully blowing in the wind and it looks gorgeous. Um, that's what they're famous for, flowing long hair. But they have recently developed a product and a message to connect with African American women who've historically been left out of major brand hair product advertising. Their ad for the Pantene Gold series actually launched in March of this year. It ran during the premiere of Empire, which is a very popular show featuring a predominantly African American cast. And it really stands out because Pantene moved beyond just casting. So when I say casting, I mean casting diverse people, actors in an ad to communicate to a target audience. Instead, they tailored a message to African American women, maintaining the Strong is Beautiful tagline they created that demonstrates a cultural insight and sensitivity. The voiceover for this ad says, "Here that doesn't conform to a beauty norm. It is authentic and transparent and reflects the African American experience of being outside of that norm." So next we're going to talk really quickly, our last slide, about a miss. Oops, sorry. Pepsi's infamous ad, the Live for Now Moments anthem featuring Kendall Jenner. Their misstep on this commercial illustrates the importance of understanding your target audience. Pepsi wanted to create an ad reaching millennials with the message of global inclusiveness, but their execution of connecting people backfired because it appeared to commercialize and make light of protest. The ad is often compared to Coca-Cola's successful 70s ad featuring a diverse cast of young people singing on a hill that they would like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. That ad became iconic because it captured the positive energy and the message of harmony. This example also illustrates the importance of creative testing. Did they put this ad in front of people who might have been the target audience to get their feedback before they ran it? And more importantly, this is a big challenge for brand marketers, having members of the marketing team that would have recognized early the problems with this ad before it even went into production. That's why it's really important for brands to be as inclusive around their table as they try to reach a diverse consumer base. Yeah. And that is it for the formal presentation. So any questions? Sure. No, it's okay. Certainly. I would absolutely say to consider advertising and consider advertising agencies or internal marketing departments where you're involved in creative development as potential jobs if you're really interested in messaging. Another important area that's involved in messaging, and as we saw from the Pepsi misstep, is under having consumer insights. What Pantene did really well in their launch of an African American ad, and they did it very effectively, it's because they had really good insights. So research is another important area. If you like digging into what consumers like and understanding them, if you would like conducting research, or when that can range from qualitative research to quantitative research, qualitative research, generally more expensive but more in depth, and you get these richer bits of information. That would be another career area to consider. But messaging, if you go to a traditional brand company like a PG&E or GE or some of those companies that classically train marketing people, they have amazing training programs. But there are also very much young startup companies, Airbnb is an example, Rover.com. There are a lot of young companies that also need marketing help, and they need people who understand how to communicate to a broad range of targets and who maybe understand millennials and where the country is moving, this next big generation of consumers. So I would say interest in research. If you're interested in being an actual creative, I would take writing classes, design classes, and focus there. If you're interested in managing the process, either account client side management on the agency side, or working as a brand or marketing manager in a brand company. Does that help me? Okay. Yeah. They do make it much cooler. My thoughts and what I've been hearing from some colleagues of mine and CMOs that I know is that part of the Pepsi's problem is literally they do not have the right people around the internal table. So sometimes if you're trying to appeal to a broad, diverse audience, but there are no millennials around that table, and there's not necessarily a diverse group of um, employees, Pepsi employees that are around that table when they're viewing it, sometimes the framework of that people come from doesn't allow them to see where they may actually be making mistakes. They had great intentions with what they wanted to do with that ad and the message that they were trying to communicate, but they didn't follow through partly because they didn't even realize before. Pepsi never would have ran that ad if they knew what was going to happen. They are a smart company, but it's a reflection of their own internal organization. That's part of the problem for companies. And it's a key insight. As we talk about in all of our marketing classes, how important it is to understand your target consumer. You also, part of understanding that target consumer sometimes is having some insight internally into who that consumer is and what they like and how they might react and respond to different messaging strategies. Some of that may come, a lot of companies use their agencies to be that, to represent that for them when they don't have it internally. In this case, Pepsi definitely misstepped. Does that answer your question, Courtney? Mhm. Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine that ad got focus grouped in in front of a millennial audience. I just don't believe that they actually did it. It's hard to believe that one would have ever passed passed through a focus group test. This is an interesting question, which I would say my gut says the question actually shows a certain bias, which is common in marketing. I think that what diverse consumers and the people that are often labeled as kind of difficult to market to um, are generally just not really fully understood by the people who are doing the marketing. And There is not a sensitivity to how to communicate effectively to the audience. I mean, Pantene is not a social service company. But what they did in their marketing and their advertising to African American women was make a commercial that was very, um, very focused and was based on some real insight and real sensitivity. So I think that's one of the issues. I think the other issue is, yes, there are some consumer groups generally where you're going to find more sensitivities, and this is true even with that Pantene ad, are people who feel like the brand has commercialized something that should not be commercialized. So that can always be problematic because it's very hard with commercial selling of any product to make a consumer group that does not want that product or that message to be commercialized. They are impossible to please because at the end of the day, all brands and all marketers are either selling a product or a service. And unless you're a nonprofit and you're giving something away, you're commercializing it. So there are those groups that I would say more difficult, but I would say overall, in terms of messaging, understanding that target, when I worked at Nissan and Infiniti, there's a significant difference between marketing a luxury car to a 50-year-old white male in the suburbs and marketing that same car to a 30-year-old Latino male in the city. The way you need to speak to those audiences it has to involve some real insight. The features of your product don't change, but the way you connect and communicate with people does. So oftentimes these slights or sense that consumers are disappointed with the brand comes out of this sense of the brand didn't take the time to understand what's important to us or how to talk to us. Does that make sense?